who gets to be human in literature, because if you're unnamed, you're effectively dehumanized.
Do you know who he reminded me of? Sheldon.
One must imagine Sisyphus happy.
I wanted to sit with Musso and sit with an absurdist and say, I understand that we're all going to die, but our babies are going to be here and the land is going to be here. And actually, in this day and age, all your crying TikToks are going to be online forever. So let's just protect what we create and the legacy, because we're building a future.
Lana Del Rey, what's her song? Born to Die. So she sings Born to Die, and Camus says, yes, exactly. And then he writes The Outsider, but that is the point. I haven't read it.
How did you get into Oxford?
Hello and welcome to the Thebibliofilles. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Chaya.
And today we are back with our next deep dive episode. And it's one that we're really excited about, following on from our deep dive into Donna Tartt's Secret History, which we had so much positive feedback about. So thank you so much for that. We decided we had to go again, right?
We did. And it was so hard to find a book that we thought captured the multitude of layers that the Secret History gave us to talk about. But can we just say thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Please do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're watching us on YouTube, do ensure to hit that like button, because it means that you will get to find out when the next episode is coming. You may have noticed, I don't know if this is just me, but on my feeds, on socials, here and there, The Stranger by Albert Camus is constantly just popping up, or it's being utilized referentially. It's become this like almost signpost of aesthetic.
It really has. It really has. And in fact, I almost think I'm guilty of this, because I bought this book ages ago and I've had it on my shelf. Oh, I like your version.
I know. How cool
Yours
is mine?
Is really cool. I think mine's more the standard.
So
it's
for
the
anyone,
Penguin Classic version.
yes, so Sophie's holding the Penguin Classic, and I have an much older Penguin version with art on the cover that has seemingly a man's head with splatters of blood, and it's very surreal. And I bought it because of the cover.
Mine has a very nice picture of Albert Camus on the back. And I'm just going to say it, he's pretty hot. We'll get to that.
He's hot.
We will get to that. He is not your average, stuffy, unattractive philosopher, is he?
No.
So I did buy this book a while ago, and I had it on my shelf, and I think I was definitely influenced into buying it. And it must have been because I saw it everywhere.
Yeah, there's been a lot of celebrities reading it.
Oh, yes. There's Gigi Hadid. She's one of them.
Ryan Gosling. And actually, Albert Camus is constantly compared to Timothée Chalamet. And in fact, it might be fair to say that Camus walked, so Timothée Chalamet could actually stare sadly into the middle distance, I would say. I think that's hilarious. I think that's pretty accurate. So I think one of the reasons that The Stranger has survived so long, and actually why it's exploding online again, is because it taps into such a modern fear that society does not actually care whether you are good intrinsically. It cares whether you perform goodness correctly. And that is terrifying. And we are going to get into it. So we're going to first tell you what's coming up. And I should just say, if you haven't read The Stranger, stick around, because you are going to end this episode sounding like you could sit a GCSE or A-level exam in philosophy. You'll know what's in the book. You'll know why people talk about it. You will be able to hold any kind of conversation. So we're going to start out by looking at performative reading. We may mock some people. And then we're going to talk a bit about why this book. And then we deep dive, because you know us now. And so, I mean, Sophie, because I did this at 3:00 this morning. Sophie's been preparing for 2 weeks.
No, I just have a lot of papers here, so I apologise for the rustling. I mean, they're all
But
really
when
scatty.
we do research, we seriously, attack a topic.
We take it seriously.
And you decided, all credit to you, that this was the book. And then you became a scholar in Albert Camus.
Well, no, I have to say, guys, that I rated this a 5-star. I think it's such an amazing book.
You're such a tough
cricket. No, but it's also because of the philosophy and because of Camus' philosophy, which I just think is incredibly liberating. But again, we will get to that. It's also very slim. you may like that too. It's a very slim book. It's easy to read. And yeah, we're giving you the lowdown.
We've both had existential crises about this book. So Albert Camus, who he was, his philosophical inspirations. Then we will tell you a bit about The Stranger. We will give you all of the summary. Then we've got themes, the liberation of absurdism, existentialism, disassociation and detachment, modern mental health, colonialism, surrealism. We're going to link it to Dostoevsky, to Kafka. It's not going to get boring because Sophie's got some hilarious takes.
But it is going to get intense, I think.
Love it. Can't wait. Yeah. Bring it on.
Yes, indeed.
And I should say, just to drop that we are so grateful to our sponsors. And actually, everyone will know who knows me, I'm so not a coffee drinker. But at 3:00 this morning, when I was in the deepest, darkest Kafka hole, and like I was like, oh my God, what if someone comments on YouTube and says, you didn't mention Jean-Paul Sartre? And like, how could you possibly not? And Heidegger and Kierkegaard.
And
Nietzsche. You are a scam artist. How dare you say this is a deep dive? I did grab our sponsor products. So thank you so much to London Nootropics for sponsoring this episode. Sophie has been rejuvenated.
I have. Well, and now you have too, but I really enjoy using London Nootropics. I use one every morning at this point. They are coffee. Initially, when we were looking at London Nootropics, I was like, is this actually coffee? It's coffee. There's enough caffeine in there to get you through the day, but it's infused with adaptogens, which are brilliant because they actually really keep me focused. So I find that I really enjoy Flow, which is one of their variants. But if you get a selection pack, you'll get to try everything. And we actually have a discount code, don't we?
We do, because we're so cool. Biblio, Biblio, put it into their Luxe website. So honestly, these products are the ones you leave out in the kitchen when you have guests.
They look like Charlotte Tilbury products. Yeah,
they really do. So it's 20% discount. Lovely. And if you decide to pick up Camus either again or for the first time after this episode, and you find yourself similarly in an existential crisis, or you just feel enthused with hope like Sophie did, and you are up at 3 a.m. like me, reach for London Nootropics. So performative reading. I mean, look, I get why people walk around with this book performatively, because I feel it's one of those ones that I think you just feel a bit clever holding it. Yes.
You just kind of do. And apparently in France, this is very much a rite of passage to walk around at a certain age. I think like teenage French boys, they walk around with The Stranger, or L'étrangère, as I believe the French reads. They walk around with it and it's like a thing, like a real thing. And I mean, if you look online, you will find that thing and you can be part of it too. But performative reading itself is something that culturally now is, I think, really acceptable, isn't it?
So we were actually talking to someone this week in kind of, not in the books industry, but very much in influencer and TV. And they were saying, books is such a look at the moment. Dior, everyone, every brand is doing something in literature.
Every brand and every celebrity has a book club. That has proliferated massively. Now, I'm not saying that those are bad, because I think some of them are really, really excellent. And that's a conversation for another time. But it is as if everybody is getting on the bandwagon. Yeah. I mean, I have to mention, I'm still waiting, Dior, for my £3,000 Truman Capote book bag. I mean, you guys have my address right. But seriously, I do. I think there is something performative about reading that is just exploding. And this, I think, is at the center of some of those explosions.
An answer. I have a hot take.
Go on.
And it's just come to me.
What is it?
Like in the book, everyone is feeling like an outsider. We're going to talk about like Merceau, and who is the main protagonist, and how we think that Camus predicted internet culture. We're all more connected than ever, and we all feel as alone as ever before. Humanity feels so isolated.
Totally.
And everyone wants community. And I feel like if you're a reader, you've got an immediate community.
Yeah.
People are leaning into the look. They're leaning into the vibe. They want to feel clever.
Do you think to be... No, you see, I think it's that. It's they want to feel clever. I'm not sure if it's... I love the community that we have online. I love it. But I think it's what you say. It's actually more about
looking or feeling clever.
Well, that's a more cynical note. I just think that people want to find their people.
Ever the cynic.
Yes.
Ever the cynic.
So, there is a question here. And do you know what? Is performative reading good or bad? We're going to get to. But why this book? It's emotionally cold. It's such a strange novel. It's a cultural text of modern alienation. And I just feel it is that signpost. I almost think that, like, if I was in Oxford and I saw some tall guy in a trench coat with floppy hair holding Camus, I'd probably give him my number.
I mean, you kind of are describing Camus himself.
No, he's so hot, it's not okay.
So, yeah, exactly. Again, I keep saying we'll get to that, but we will. But I also think, I've said it before, this is also a very slim book. So I think that's a big reason as to why people walk around reading this performatively. I mean, Camus has written other books, but The Outsider is the one. I mean, look, we're talking, it's 111 pages.
And it signals so much. It communicates that you're intelligent, that you're detached, you're melancholic, you're philosophically serious.
But wouldn't you say Meursault is someone who has very much emotionally just logged off and logged out of life?
And this matches.
And I love that.
And this matches the emotional tone of the internet, the numbness, the irony, the burnout, that overstimulation. Meursault just feels like someone who's emotionally logged off. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's just not in there. Performative reading, I don't think we're here to say that performative reading is necessarily bad. Like, with these celebrity book clubs, great. Use your platform to get more people into literature.
Absolutely. Look, get them into literature and, get them into a book and maybe get them offline. But I also think on the plus side as well with performative reading, ultimately, it's giving books publicity and it can lead to you genuinely discovering an amazing book. So I'm here for that.
Can I tell you?
Go on.
Listener,
you have that look in your eye.
I give you a challenge.
Go on.
So if you see someone either on the train performatively reading Camus or someone mentions it at a dinner party, and after this episode you are like thesis level knowledgeable of Camus, please challenge them. Please drop, oh no, but it's so like Kierkegaard, and see if they know. See if the person has actually read it, because I say it's actually a very accessible book. It's really not hard to read.
But it is so profound. I think it's just incredible.
So definitely challenge the next person you see reading it. You may find a new best mate who loves books as much as you. You may find that someone hasn't read it and is just posing.
Yeah. I'd love that, actually.
Let's find the posers. Let's read them out. So who was Albert Camus?
Albert Camus. And I'm just going to say it because I'm going to expose my flaws. But for some time prior to this deep dive, I was calling him Albert Camus. And I hold my hands up in shame.
So was I.
Albert Camus. We were actually corrected by one of the lovely team at Bubble when we were doing some work with them recently. And they informed us that our pronunciation was wrong. So thank you for
And because he's French, I feel like I should put on my sunglasses and pose. No, I've just talked about posing, but now I'm in my like
just
shoulder
get
pads.
Performative. Now's the time.
I'm dressed in like what I envision Camus would like if he was alive and I was flirting with him. I'm wearing like a blazer. I've got my glasses on.
I should have worn a trench coat.
I've got one.
I can put yours on. I can put your posh one on. Okay, so Albert Camus, he grew up in poverty in colonial Algeria, and his father died in the First World War, and he was raised pretty much entirely by his almost deaf, illiterate mother in a very cramped apartment. Somehow he has now become the patron saint of, let's say, beautiful disillusionment. Mm-hmm. He was a massive football player. He played as a goalkeeper, which is actually really relevant. Chain-smoking, existential heartthrob who actually made despair sound pretty damn seductive. He kind of occupies this really strange space between philosopher, journalist, celebrity, and cultural myth/icon.
And he's basically James Bond.
He is basically James Bond.
Because he worked with the Resistance.
I read that he sort of never had less than 3 girlfriends at the same time. But ultimately, he understood modern alienation before modernity actually arrived. And I think that is the crux of his philosophy. He actually died tragically young in a car crash. There was an unused train ticket in his pocket. He had decided to drive with his publisher rather than go on the train, which he'd paid for. And there we go. I mean, it's so tragically poetic, isn't it? It almost feels invented. But he died that day. I think he was 47. Mm-hmm. And I think, when you come away from reading this book, you come away with this combination of feeling devastated, yes, but for me anyway, strangely alive as well.
Oh, yes. So his philosophical inspirations, before we get to the summary. So Camus himself said that his philosophical origins lay in ancient Greek philosophy, Nietzsche, and 17th century moralists. He was very into kind of Kierkegaard, Karl Jaspers, Martin Heidegger. His other works include The Plague, which honestly don't read if you're still traumatized from COVID, and The Myth of Sisyphus, which was a criticism of various aspects of existentialism. I will just say Sisyphus is the person in Greek mythology who is every day pushing up that massive stone that rolls back down.
I want to just make one point about that book. So The Myth of Sisyphus was published in 1942, which is exactly the same year that The Outsider was published. And he kind of wrote them alongside each other. So it's almost important to see them as part of the same wider intellectual project. And in a way, The Myth of Sisyphus is the philosophical expression of Camus's absurdism, whereas The Stranger is the novelistic expression of that absurdism.
I really love the academic in you.
Sometimes it comes out, and sometimes
I love it so much.
I just want to talk about what everyone was wearing at the BAFTAs. But there we go.
So, the summary of The Strangers. I mean, we're going to get, if like me, because again, I will say I did not study philosophy in university. I've always had an interest, but I have to say the deep dive of this book really helped me see where I'm going to make my own curriculum.
Would you have rather now done philosophy or Elvish?
Why are you asking? I actually think philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, this really made me want to learn more philosophy, and I'm a bit jealous of your books there.
I know. The joke is, and I don't think my husband listens to this podcast, which is so helpful.
Definitely doesn't.
Yeah, no, because that's great, because then we can talk about all the things that we don't want them to hear. But I was like researching the book, and then last night again, 3 a.m, I was putting all my books together for the studio. I owned all the books that I have not read.
You had them all.
Because I was a teenager, I was just like, I built myself a library, and I would find secondhand Penguins, and I would find like Wentworth editions, which are £1 or £2. And I have all my Dostoevskys, like Hume. I've got all of them. I was like,
I will say,
I'll just bring them. But I'm a poser. I haven't read most of them.
But I was going to say, I know it's not performative, because even though you haven't read them, I don't believe it's performative. You want them, you will read them. They're there for a reason.
Read them. I just watch too much TV and doom scroll. So we are going to give you a bit more information about Heidegger and Nietzsche. And I also should say Camus's philosophy I did it. Yeah. Camus.
Camus.
I'm such
Look, let's be honest. We have been criticised because we can't even pronounce the Thebibliofilles correctly, which if we were being strictly French about it, we would say the Thebibliofilles. I'm saying it
which
now,
was the idea.
I actually just feel ridiculous doing that. Or the Latin, wasn't it? The Thebibliofilles. Okay,
no, philia is girl.
Sorry.
Oh, puella. Okay,
Whatever.
Never mind.
Another time.
Camus' philosophy teacher in the Algiers was a crucial mentor for him as well, who introduced him to these key philosophical ideas that shaped his intellectual trajectory. And so we will go into Stoicism and what Kierkegaard says. I won't give you a Kierkegaard lecture, though. Now I can. We will just give you the headlines. So, L'Étranger, Strangers. It's a very, very interesting and odd little book, because you start off with Marceau engaging with the funeral, the death of his mother.
Can I read the opening? Because I think we have to. I actually think it's as important as the opening of The Secret History, which we have said is possibly one of the best book openings ever. But this one, let's start. My mother died today, or maybe yesterday, I don't know. I received a telegram from the old people's home. Mother deceased. Funeral tomorrow. Very sincerely yours. That doesn't mean anything. It might have been yesterday.
Shivers. That sets the tone. So
really
his mother dies and he is unmoved. And it's not that he refuses to grieve. It's almost like he doesn't have the capacity. Marceau, our protagonist, who is very descriptive and vivid in his explanation of his surroundings. And there is a very deep interiority, but it is so surface level. And he goes back home. He's very concerned with the weather and his comfortability. He goes swimming with a girl.
He's very attracted to her.
He's very attracted to her. He then goes away. There's an incident. Someone dies. He is on trial. And that third part of the book where he's in court and it's clear that his guilt or innocence is actually not going to be determined by what he did or did not do, because he's very forthcoming in that he shot this individual who is called in the book the Arab.
The Arab. We never get a name.
We will talk about that colonialism and the dehumanization of the person he killed. But he's on trial for being something different, for being an outsider.
And being so detached. Like, it's like he can't engage with what he's done, but in his mind, he's okay with it. And I think that's the point.
And you get those snapshots. You get the snapshots of him at the trial and the investigation. And that precedes his holiday and the travel. And
also he goes to the funeral home to see his mother, but he doesn't want to see her. He's very, very detached. At the funeral, he doesn't cry. He drinks coffee and he smokes. And he's kind of just, it's almost a normal, I'm saying normal person, what they wouldn't react like that. But I think the point he's making is that this is my way of reacting, and there's kind of nothing wrong with that.
It's normal for him. He's going through the motions and actually suffused throughout the prose. But again, it's so short that what's amazing is that Camus does not have the time or space to do the thesis that we have then done. He's just dropping lines in here of when Meursault is confronted by the investigator, the chief magistrate, and then at the trial, the jury, and they are questioning how he behaved after the death of his mother. And you might be thinking, sorry?
Well, they are obsessed with his behaviour.
Why is that relevant?
Well, you're a barrister. How would that play down in court?
I cannot tell you how much this actually is a reread. This is not the first time I picked up this book. Right. I read this. This is maybe my fourth or fifth time. But I read it in university. Now reading the book, having had a number of years at the criminal bar, I was foaming at the mouth. It is utterly irrelevant. Imagine if someone burgles a house and I start asking them, well, you weren't very well behaved as a child, were you? I'd be trying to colour the jury's minds of who they were as a person when it is not relevant to the nexus of the case.
Right.
And it's so interesting. And actually, there's a lot here from Kafka about the surrealism of bureaucracy. You almost feel like the system is trying to justify his actions because he killed someone who's also an outsider, an Arab. And they're like, there must have been a reason. And then they realise that he just doesn't care and he's detached. And they're like, the prosecution start building this picture in the jury's minds as someone who has no morality. He has no soul. And the weird thing is, this is an open and shut case. He says, I killed him. And there was barely any provocation. Yes, there was a previous incident between the friendship group that he has, but nothing to do with him.
No.
And he's like, yeah, no, I did kill him. And they're like, you didn't cry. You didn't cry. You went to the cinema, didn't you, with your girlfriend, and then you went swimming. You laughed at this funny film the day of your mother's death. You have no soul. And every lawyer in modern world be going, that is not relevant information. How dare you? That's prejudicial. There's no probative value. And it's about that bureaucracy that is so agenda-driven.
Yeah, but I think that brings us really nicely onto the point of Camus' philosophy, this idea of absurdism. So we're explaining to you how he doesn't really react in the way that we would expect people to conventionally react.
The socially acceptable way.
The socially acceptable way to react to difficult situations, and probably any kind of situations. There is a way that we deem in society as socially acceptable. And Meursault and Camus, I would imagine in real life, who probably embodied his own philosophy, did not do that. So the philosophy is called absurdism, which I actually love. And the idea is that we as humans, we want life to make sense. We're actually desperate for life to have meaning and to make sense.
It's the whole basis of religion.
It is. But the fact is, according to absurdism, there is no clear meaning that the universe actually offers. So in a sense, existentialism's argument is that we create the meaning, but absurdism is, well, look, there isn't meaning, but we've got to live anyway, which was the whole point of the book, The Myth of Sisyphus. Is like Sisyphus is going up that hill with that rock, but he's living and you just got to do it anyway. I mean, it's funny when you think about it, because I was thinking about like Lana Del Rey, because she is. No, but Lana Del Rey, what's her song? Born to Die. So she sings Born to Die, and Camus says, yes, exactly. And then he writes The Outsider. But that is the point. No, but it's like we are born to die, and we've got to find a way of getting our heads around that. And actually, I was reading this point about absurdism that, and I'm not certain if it was Camus who said that, but it probably was, is that ultimately you've got three options to deal with this fact, as in life has no meaning. What are you going to do about it? Like, you either commit suicide, not a great option necessarily. You either take a leap of faith and you essentially commit what he describes as philosophical suicide by basically pretending that there's a higher power. That's what he says. And therefore, you're imbuing a kind of false meaning, in his opinion, into your life. Or you just embrace the absurd and you essentially live your best life in the knowledge that there's no meaning. And actually, that's kind of liberating, isn't it? And it's interesting because when we were talking to someone about this book, and I'm going to keep it nameless, but they were explaining to us that they worked in an anxiety workshop. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And they recommended this book to people who suffered from anxiety, in that the attitude of behind absurdism is kind of like, I found it really liberating. Like, in a way, nothing's that big of a deal.
And here you
Which
see,
is probably really, really basic, but nothing's that big of a deal. That's how I took it.
and here you see Sophie's hopeful response to the book, whereas I was like, nothing is worth, it's not worth living
I'm
for.
the positive one this time.
You are.
I loved it.
There is a real difference between absurdism, existentialism, and nihilism. But I'm just going to stop, because whilst you were speaking about Meursault into the prelude to absurdism and the emotional performance, don't you think Albert Camus predicted internet culture?
Oh, totally.
He predicted it. Think about it. We constantly
did,
perform.
Kaya.
I can't bear. I'm just going to say it. It's a hot take, and then we're going to get back to philosophy. And I think it's all baked in. Sorry. If you are going through a hard time, who turns on the camera and cries? Okay?
Yeah,
who goes
it really makes
and then
me
goes,
ill.
There are such funny There are so funny.
I tell
Where they're like, that wasn't a good angle. Let me try again. Oh my God, I got dubbed. It's like, this is a joke.
I saw someone filming something like highly emotional, but when you were watching it, it was so obvious that this was like a 7th or 8th take of doing that. And what was weird was it involved them tripping up. And I was thinking, did you trip up like on multiple times? And then this was posted everywhere. And I sometimes wonder, is it me? Is it me? Am I just not getting with the program? Because I feel it's what so many people do nowadays. It just makes me so uncomfortable.
So we're constantly performing outrage.
And we all go on about authenticity. Everyone's going on about authenticity. But how can you reconcile that with this obsession of like performing? It doesn't make sense.
Grief, empathy, morality, political awareness.
But Camus gets authenticity.
We live in an era where emotional performance is public currency. We look at some of the book things that do well, and it's people sobbing to A Little Life or Achilles in the past.
Well, we're not saying that's all bad necessarily.
No, but it's
just
about
a bit like, whoa.
No, it's about the performative element.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what he's rejecting. And with absurdism, to link the prediction of this dire internet culture, which I think is absolutely diabolical, is that there's this dissonance between people wanting life to have meaning and the silent, indifferent universe that offers none, so we perform it. So this indifference of the universe, which Sophie found so liberating, which is a rejection of traditional religious comforts, it's that, I don't care what you think of me. If he cared, he would have cried about his mother dying to make everyone else feel better.
And his fate, possibly, as well. Like, he kind of accepts it.
Yes, he does.
But did you find it depressing?
No, I'll tell you, and I think this is really important. Existentialism is all about creating meaning, whereas absurdism is all about meaning may not exist, but we might as well live anyway.
Yeah.
Nihilism is it's not, there's no point, so we might so there's no rules in essence. So that
nihilism is much more negative.
Yes, absolutely.
Pessimistic, I'd say.
I found, so it's interesting. So Sartre's key points on Jean-Paul Sartre was a colleague, if in a sense, of Albert Camus. And he published a very famous article called Exploration de l'étranger in 1947. And he did accept that Meursault was a figure intertwined with the concept of the absurd because of his detachment. But he suggests this reflects an existence devoid of illusion or comforting beliefs and without seeking transcendent meaning. And I found that passive confrontation of life was really sad because, for me, I live for my kids.
Yeah.
So I don't accept that the central premise of absurdism, because my babies are going to have their babies and I'm going to live forever. That's how I see it. And if you see your life as to give others, it's a bit like we just did an interview with Maggie O'Farrell and her new book Land talk about the impermanence of humanity and the permanence of land
and memory in
objects and the things around us.
And I wanted to sit with Musso and sit with an absurdist and say, I understand that we're all going to die, but our babies are going to be here and the land is going to be here. And actually, in this day and age, all your crying TikToks are going to be online forever. So let's just protect what we create and the legacy, because we're building a future. Is that too cliche?
No, I don't think it is. And I think you can come away totally with that. I just think that ultimately what he does is, if you live in this absurdist way, then a lot of the challenges and the really difficult things in life kind of shrink in their importance. So
yes,
failure's not that big a deal.
No.
Maybe you'd be less embarrassed about things. In the myth of Sisyphus. So this is, I have not read it. Have you read it?
Yes.
Okay, so it's Sisyphus walking up the hill with the rock, and it's just repetition, right? Going up and down this mountain. Is that right?
Well, that's the concept of Sisyphus,
That's the concept. If life is this repetitive, chaotic, but kind of meaningless thing, obviously the question is, why do we live? Like, why continue living? And I think the point, Camus ends that book with I think the words are, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. And I kind of love that, because he dismantles a lot of false comfort. He rejects the idea that religion can solve like all problems. He rejects like this easy optimism. He rejects the fantasy that the universe is suddenly going to explain itself. And yes, we desperately want meaning, but what does the universe really offer back? Yes, of course, we can say our children and going on and generations, but there is also a way of looking at that the universe kind of offers us a bit of a silence, like in terms of the answer, like is
Nothing
there a real
matters.
answer? And that clash over the hunger for meaning versus the indifference is what he's tackling. But if you just imagine Sisyphus happy, it's like, just kind of live your life and live it as best you can. At least that's my takeaway.
It's interesting, because if you then link it to those wider points that we were going to in this section about kind of why Camus rejected both despair and false hope, bringing in Nietzsche, who was a self-professed nihilist, that life is meaningless concept leads to apathy and despair. And then Nietzsche very much, I think it was in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, where he felt that if old meanings are constantly going to collapse, then we need to build new meaning. So Thus Spoke Zarathustra was a philosophical novel published in the 1800s, and it represents that key idea in the form of prophetic speeches by this sage exploring self-overcoming and the death of God and the creation of new values. And it's like a quasi-biblical narrative. And it's a blend of poetry, allegory, and sermon. But I was thinking about it a lot in terms of, because I have read that, and I was thinking about how that placed Camus in this sphere of, there is such a powerful scene in L'Étranger, The Outsider, where Meursault is in a jail cell and there is a priest, and there's also the chief magistrate, but substantively the priest, and he's desperately trying to get him to either speak about his emotions, engage with the concept
Identify
of what
with
he's
religion
done
as well.
And he's just so dismissive, because he's like, it's all created. If you reject the premise of a higher power, then nothing you say is relevant. And actually, there was no rebuilding, and the priest just walks away in anger, because there's nothing you can do without faith.
But you know what? There was one bit, and I'm not sort of, I suppose this is how I took it, but I'm not sort of reinventing Camus' theory, but I slightly wondered if maybe there was something that suggested, obviously he is fully absurdist, but maybe suggested that the death of his mother had actually impacted him. Because, you kind of get the impression that, we read the opening, it was all very like, oh, he might as well have said, I had a jacket potato for lunch and then gone to work, and like as if nothing had happened.
But for me, one bit that really, do you ever get this when you read a book and you read a moment and you get like goosebumps? You're like, oh, maybe. So this for me really stuck out. So when we hear about him killing the Arab on the beach, so that scene happens at the end. This book is actually divided into two parts, which seems kind of weird because it's so short, but it's actually really well structured in its shortness. So I want to get to the point. So here, he's on the beach. The Arab is also on the beach. And I'll read this point. So the Arab hadn't moved. He was actually still quite far away. Perhaps because of the way his face was hidden in shadow, he seemed to be laughing. I waited. The burning sun struck my cheeks, and I could feel drops of sweat gathering above my eyebrows. It was the same sun as the day I'd buried Mama. And like then, it was my forehead that hurt the most, and I could feel every vein throbbing beneath my skin. And then, later on, when he's in the dock and he's talking, and the prosecutor, he's in the dock and the judge is coughing, and he stood up, and it says, he stood up because he wanted to say something. I said, rather confusingly, that I hadn't intended to kill the Arab. And he said then, I said rather quickly, muddling up my words a bit and completely aware of how ridiculous I sounded, that it was because of the sun. And for me, that whole moment where he's saying that he killed him because of the sun, and we know that the moment he killed him, he identifies that sun with the death of his mother. It was the same sun. It made me think, actually, maybe there is something more meaning, like there is a connection there, and the connection's like not obvious, but it is there, and it did affect him. And in fact, it was almost like, was it a delayed trauma reaction? And obviously, I know Camus not here to sort of say anything about that. And clearly, this is just my own interpretation. But for me, it kind of made me think that even with all this absurdism, there is still like a meaning under the surface.
That's fascinating.
It was that sun.
See, I took it as a totally different way. In the next topic, like in the next section, we're going to look at mental health. And actually, I found the most fascinating academic article about Merceau as an autistic person.
Oh yeah, you said.
I just found that, like, as someone who gets very severely overstimulated and also very sensory.
I got in my car this morning and I had some music on, and she was wearing her sunglasses and looked at me. She goes, you have to turn that off. I'm so overstimulated and it is so early. So we drove in silence.
I can't take noise in the morning. Barry's got such a loud voice and he like speaks to me like, you're bellowing.
Good thing he doesn't listen to the podcast.
No, he knows. I constantly tell him you're bellowing at me. And I just felt like it was about that it's that the sensory thing where the sun is hitting him. And even though he's in this moment of about to be burying his mother, he's much more concentrated on his physical comfortability because that's what he can really connect to. And then when he's about to kill this individual, he's still so aware of his physical state. It's not like that's his interiority.
But that is the beauty of reading. We can both come away and take different things, and neither of us is right or wrong.
So just to finish off, because I don't want to get shouted at by academics on the internet, Søren Kierkegaard, who lived between 1813 and 1855, they were both, and Camus, have a lot of comparative points. So if you are writing an essay and thought this would be a good video to listen to start your journey into absurdism or Camus, I would say please do look at Kierkegaard. Both are grounded in their philosophies in the absurd, the conflict between humanity's desire for meaning. What I would say, you mentioned leap of faith. That is critical here.
What, in existentialism?
In absurdism, in existentialism, and all of it. Kierkegaard advocates a leap of faith into religious commitment to overcome this despair.
Yeah.
Camus rejects this as philosophical suicide. That's my note. On living with tension, I think I got that from another article that I found. We've just covered that absurdism, existentialism, the difference between nihilism, Nietzsche, and why Camus rejected both despair and false hope. He just found it a false hope. And that is so redolent in that scene with the priest. And we now come to disassociation, detachment, and modern mental health. So it's very interesting. Many readers interpret Merceau through very many lenses. Is he depressed, numb, burnt out? The depersonalization. And it's very important. We don't want to romanticize him. He's not an aspirational character. He articulates emotional states that many people, I think, secretly recognize. And that, you know, he's such a disassociated character, but it seemed, do you know who he reminded me of? Sheldon. That's my hot take.
Really?
Yes. Come on, Sheldon in The Big Bang Theory.
No, I suppose.
Who's like, I don't know how to hug this person. I don't know how to propose to my girlfriend. He gets on a plane to propose and then leaves the room.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have. Yeah, I get it. I do get it.
That's why people think that there's Asperger's and autism in this book, because you cannot understand the world around you through the lens of most people's understanding.
But don't you think it's quite interesting? So one of the facts that I mentioned about Camus is that he was actually a footballer, but not just a footballer, he was a goalkeeper. And I'm relating this because he went through something that must have been really difficult. He loved football. He actually said that everything I know most surely about morality and obligations, I owe to football.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And he played goalkeeper for an Algerian team called Racing Universitaire d'Alger. I really have to work on my accent. But being a goalkeeper is not just the same as another position on the field. It's quite like lonely and it's very reactive. So I actually saw someone described it as existentialism in shin pads, but you're basically standing there waiting to react to what other people do. And it's like waiting for a catastrophe. Are you going to let the ball in? Like, yes, you have those moments when you kick the ball away, but ultimately you are effectively like stuck in one place waiting to react to other people. And yes, he owed so much to football, but relating specifically to mental health, it's interesting because at 17, tuberculosis stopped him playing football.
Indeed.
That was the end of that. And obviously it pushed him towards writing, I suppose. I think I've not read anything about this, but I can only assume how challenging that must have been as like someone who comes from a family of ardent football fans. But imagine feeling like your life is going one way, then it kind of changes. Yes, he was still young, but it changed the course of the direction of his life. And actually, maybe it's good for him that he had that absurdist philosophy to get him through those kind of challenges.
It's so true. And listen, this is a Nobel Prize laureate.
Yeah, it's no joke.
He reached such heights.
He was on the front of Vogue.
I know, well, because he's so hot. But he, it's interesting because Mousseau does have emotions. He just approaches them. I saw a really interesting comment, and I think it might have been on I deep dive again. I was watching lots of YouTube videos. I wanted to see other people's understanding. And there was an amazing comment that I noted down. So I'm not going to take credit for this. That Mousseau reacts to emotion like an infant discovering them for the first time. He does not retrospectively obsess over his own feelings. There's no overthinking here.
No, which is why I think it's liberating.
I think that's why I understand that.
And actually, you're not going to read this and necessarily have like a massive think, you're probably not going to agree with Mousseau, because what he does is very, very bad. He kills someone on a beach, let's be blunt about it. But actually, where I think you're going to connect with the book is because you're going to recognize that exhaustion that comes with pretending.
That's so true. It's so true. And I think, that emotional flattening, the overstimulation, the disconnection from institutions, the inability to feel correctly. And I think
exactly, it's like you said, it's all about the correctness of it.
I think it's really interesting. I think everyone is so petrified of either being cancelled or upset. I'm not worried about us being cancelled. I genuinely feel so ill when someone picks one of our videos apart and says, you weren't diverse enough, broad enough, you didn't think about these aspects. And I feel like I've let people down.
But
then you're constantly editing yourself. Yeah. You're like, I'm not saying the right thing here. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I'm constantly re-editing myself.
That's the way he did predict internet culture before there was any sort of internet culture. And that's why this is such an important book.
It is such an important book. And that disassociation and detachment, I've said, I found this article about how we can see him through an autistic lens and an Asperger
I think that's
lens.
Really interesting.
Well, because you've got every aspect. You've got sensory issues. You've got the inability to understand emotion.
Sensory is so massive to this book. And we've talked about the sun, but it is everywhere. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah. Actually, Sartre comments on Camus's Camus. I hate
Didn't
myself.
They have a massive fight,
They did.
and Camus,
they did.
Proper.
They did. I'll get to that. Camus' sparse and detached prose, which mirrors Mousseau's worldview, that even the way the book is written is a presentation of that detachment.
Yeah.
There's no flowery language at all, which is why you get so much in 190
I was going to say that's why it's so short. But it's I think it's important also to talk about the colonial aspect
Yes.
of the book. We have no name for the murdered man, who is just referred to as the Arab. And I think that's, when you're looking, I think you mentioned already that they were both outsiders. And Camus himself, in real life, was an outsider, I think, as someone coming from Algeria into France. That would have been very much an aspect of his life. But clearly it's sort of, you can ask the question, unnamed, who gets to be human in literature? Because if you're unnamed, you're effectively dehumanized. And maybe if the Arab had been named, we might have, how did you feel about the murder? When I think about it, it probably would have made a massive difference, actually, if the Arab had a name or had been referred to by name, but actually just the Arab. It's pretty dehumanizing, isn't it?
So, and I need to link this back to the trial, because I have been involved in a lot of trials and a lot of court cases. And I know that presentation is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about victim myths and stereotypes, okay, people expect victims, particularly in rape and sexual offences trials, to act a certain way. And they just want you to shout and scream. And if it's a stranger rape or if it's familial, and people pick victims apart. Why didn't you shout? Why didn't you scream? Particularly in domestic violence issues, coercive controlling behaviour. Why didn't you do this, X, Y, Z? They do the same thing to Mousseau, and they don't do that to the Arab. Why? Because he is completely dehumanised. And any barrister will tell you that the way that your witnesses behave, it actually supersedes the strength of the evidence, because if it's one word against another, and even if it's not, and even if you've got really compelling corroborative evidence, if you've got someone totally detached on the stand that can't connect with the jury, that is a massive issue.
Well, that was much more of a problem for the judge in this case.
Indeed.
For Mousseau, was his behaviour.
He was almost sentenced, and this is the point, it's the point that's on the back. He's sentenced for not having emotion. That's why he's sentenced to death.
Yeah.
He is not sentenced for killing someone. And that is all about colonialism, because if they had humanized the Arab, and I think Camus does this very strategically, it's interesting that the framing of the stranger has very much through a philosophical lens, and recent criticism. I was finding a lot more academic papers on exactly the point you so cleverly make, which is that we need to recenter this book into a colonial context. That Mousseau is a stranger because of his position, but actually he's then interacting with someone on a lower strata socially than him. And people are desperate to explain his actions because it's just an Arab.
Yeah.
And the way that he doesn't perform in court is exactly the point about the internet. We all have to perform a certain way. And it's also about genuine principles of justice, that you can have an open and shut case. I had the most compelling victim in a trial once, and I could see that she wasn't displaying the right emotion that people expected. And that it's so important. And again, this links to how we view people. Like if their victimhood, if you saw their background, if that Arab had been, you would have heard about his childhood, the people who loved him.
Yeah.
God, his murder would have been seriously affected.
Yeah,
whereas now he's nameless.
Nameless.
Isn't that so critical?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would just say, because we said we were going to mention Kafka and surrealism and the nightmare of social systems, I would just point out to anyone in the deep dive from an academic perspective, or if you want to read something which is a bit heftier because you're now on a classics run, Sergei Hackl, who is often cited in comparative literature studies that I noted, highlights key parallels between Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. This is the book that I read first year law, and The Stranger. Both Rodion and Mousseau are unconventional, solitary young men. They, despite differing motivations, commit murder during an intensely hot summer. But in Crime and Punishment, there's premeditation driven by a desire to test the theoretical utilitarian right to kill. And in Mousseau's act, it's much more absurdist, it's impulsive, it's driven by sensory overwhelm, as my learned friend has pointed out, and a lack of connection to his actions. And the reaction to guilt is also really important as well.
I love that there is so much to take.
There's so much, because we haven't even mentioned my darling Kafka, because Kafka is so important here as well. If anyone has read Metamorphosis, have you read Kafka?
No.
Oh my God, you have to.
Are you going to get us annoyed that I hadn't read The Bell Jar or...
Oh my God, The Bell Jar was an outrage. I'm sorry.
I know.
So the trial Joseph K. is arrested for an unknown crime by an accessible, illogical bureaucracy exploring the nightmare of guilt and systemic oppression. And in Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa wakes up as a giant insect, highlighting alienation within the family and the professional world, which is often seen as a metaphor for disease or profound dysfunction. And Kafka's kind of surreal psychological, Camus is philosophical active. So definitely, if you are interested in reading more about alienation or the bureaucracy, because didn't you feel in the trial, Camus like, this is all ridiculous?
Yeah. I think
they're
so.
asking ridiculous
I'm trying
questions.
to think, are there any novels
Oh,
that
good
you
question.
take from this? I was thinking a bit about
Tell me.
Assembly by Natasha Brown. Like that is,
Love that book.
it's a fantastic book, also slim. And that feeling of being the outsider, this is different because obviously the main character has she's sort of ticked every box to fit in, right? And to me, it just made me think of that.
Oh God, you're so clever.
She
I forget
is
how clever you are.
a
So brilliant.
successful young black woman who is about to go to this garden party at her white boyfriend's country
Oh my God,
estate.
I love that book. It's
And
so
she's-
slim as well.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking another slim book. This is where we're different because you're suggesting all the elite philosophical reads, and I'm like, guys,
sorry,
let's keep it slim.
No.
I'm going to recommend some short ones for you.
No, but Assembly was absolutely lauded.
Oh yeah, and deeply profound, but also slim. I'm just trying to think along the novel lines.
Well,
Were there any more?
Catcher in the Rye.
Catcher in the Rye.
J.D. Salinger.
I haven't read it. How did you
get into Oxford?
Did you see? Did you see what someone commented on my post about history books I'd read?
Yes, tell everyone. It was so
I
insane.
put a post up at a carousel on Instagram about the books that I wish I'd read as I was studying history in Oxford. The point was to show. If I may say, it was a great selection of novels. It was all about like reading outside kind of the curriculum that we're prescribed. And somewhere, I'm not sure where, in my caption, in one of my 20 captions that I put together on each of these books, I'd written hone in instead of home in. Now, I had used it incorrectly. And I now want to, it was actually, I've had a really funny exchange with them, but they wrote something like, how did she ever go to Oxford when she's not using these words correctly? No, but it was actually done in a really funny way. And I thanked them for their pedantry and agreed, how was I let into such an institution to study for 3 years? But it was meant in jest, but it was quite funny. But my point is, a slim novel that you might like, if you want to keep dealing with themes a bit similar to The Outsider, I reckon Natasha Brown Assembly is like that's
an amazing modern day.
Yeah.
My classic ones are Sartre's Nausea, also Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground, and also The Tunnel by Ernesto Sabato. And that's a murderous man's alienation, often compared to The Stranger. And then there's loads of books that one can find about Camus because
I actually really want to read some of his other works. I want to read The Myth of Sisyphus because I feel like actually I should have read the two of them together, and I've done us a disservice by not doing that.
No, you haven't.
So I apologise, guys.
Another book that's just popped into my mind is Samuel Beckett, Waiting for Godot.
I have to say, I loved doing this because we were saying after The Secret History, it's quite challenging to find those books. And this one to us, it's made a lot of sense. And I have to say, I've definitely come away feeling like not only have I read an incredible book, but I've actually taken away quite a lot philosophically speaking, which I love. Like I found myself learning about all these philosophical concepts, but in the most undaunting of ways. And I love that.
Yeah.
And I love that such a slim book really warrants a proper deep dive.
But this is the point that we struggled with Secret History. You decided Camus, and I was so amazingly grateful because it has such depth that we can plummet. I mean, it's so hard to find that.
But it's so relevant now in today's world.
It's so relevant. Guys, the next time you see Albert Camus being read on the train, go up to that person, not in a weird way, and be like, tell me about it. And if they don't know what they're talking about, they are performative.
They are. And can I just ask while we're here, this is a genuine request for help. Other books that you think, other books you'd like to see us deep dive into, because we want your opinions here. We want to know, actually, we've been thinking of a few, but we want to know any titles that you think would warrant a deep dive.
And we're doing also topics as well as a deep dive. We're going to have, this podcast is going to be very much fluid. There's going to be some episodes like books we would sell our soul to read again, and like with a whole host of recommendations for you. And then there'll be kind of more
thematic focus, and then deep dives too. But the deep dives, we want to hear from you. So just DM us on Instagram. We've got our email address there, or just comment on the show or whatever.
And thank you so much for coming to our little therapy session on existentialism, because I maintain I did not lose sight of the most important purpose in my life, which is my kids and why I'm here. But it did make me think, it's all for nothing.
Well, whereas I think I've come away thinking, I'm actually a bit of an absurdist. So what does that say about me? But maybe that's for an offline discussion. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.